Hi there guys, so today we're looking at the Gladiator tank. So we're going to build it up. I'm not sure what options I'm going to go with yet, but what I do know is that if it's easy to use magnets, I've got some great big massive ones here and some little tiny ones. If it's easy to knock this together and make these weapon loadouts exchangeable, I'm going to do that. So I'll build the model. We'll have a look at it, we'll have a look at all the stats and that go with it, and we'll sum up at the end. If this video does well, I know this came out a while ago, but if this video does well, I'll come back and have a look at the hammer fall bunker and do exactly the same. So, let's see what we've got in the box first. So I haven't seen this yet. It was fairly chunky. So we've got our assembly guide. We've got one. So we've got two large sprues. One there, which is for different weapon loadouts, it looks like. Just one sort of half sprue there. We've got it's a grav tank, so it's got this to lift it off the surface a bit. And we've got a great big base there. So, as standard, we've got a lot of Space Marine transfers as well, so Ultramarine transfers. Now looking at this, it doesn't look like it's going to be too difficult to put together. So we've got three variants: the Valiant, the Reaper and the Lancer. And the only differences are the main sort of cannon here and the weapons on either side of the tank there. So hopefully it's not going to be too difficult to make these parts transferable. So let's have a look, let's get cracking. The model itself doesn't look too difficult to put together. So looking at this, I reckon I've probably got about an hour and a half's worth of building here. Right, let's have a look. Okay, so that's page one done. Going okay so far. 20 minutes in. Just when you're attaching these exhausts on the back here, you see one there, just resist the urge to push it in too much, because this little panel here is something we glued just a few minutes ago. So if you push it too hard, you could potentially push it back into the kind of body of the tank. You'd have to start breaking things apart to try and get back in there. Okay, so we've gone about as far as we can in the build before we start getting into weapons and that kind of thing. So basically we've got a section here. The reason I thought it was customizable, because there's some parts here not to glue. So the non-glue bit is we just set the guns in here with no glue, so as the actual guns themselves can move about, but these pieces actually glue together. So this is what we're going to try and magnetize to see if we can make this fully modifiable. So I'm just going to make up the guns themselves before we carry on. So in actually thinking about it, there's enough, this whole section, once it's got the weapons on it, that doesn't actually glue in there anyway, so that kind of sits more or less as is, so you can move it around as you travel. Now there's actually more tension in this piece that fits on than there is for the bit as it actually sits on the tank itself. So what we can do is, without gluing, we can just swap out our weapons and pop it in there. And actually, if you were to pick it up from here, it wouldn't actually open the part that is sort of lightly wedged, because this just sits on top for the actual battle anyway. It doesn't actually glue there. So for this top section, we don't even need to magnetize anything. We can swap out weapons quite freely. There you go. So that bit, the bit I thought was going to be difficult, is actually very easy. So let's work on these weapons on the side now. Okay, so the next parts, there's two weapons that go in the side here, and the first two parts are parts A8 and A30, and then for the other side it's A11 and A30. Now you can glue those parts in without issue, but the bits that come next will need to be magnetized. Now those two parts that you build, you can see that there's some little nubs left in there, which you're going to use to attach your different weapons to it. So we're going to clip those little nubs out, and we're going to replace them with a very small magnet. So I've got some tiny 2mm magnets, which I'm going to whack in now, which should be enough to hold it in place. Now when you're magnetizing, it's very easy to forget and difficult to fix. Make sure that your magnets are the right way round, because you've got the two different poles of a magnet. One repels and one attracts. Now that there might be enough room for us to just glue a magnet in without actually So put super glue in one end, and then we're going to drop our little magnets on there. You can use something to move it around, get it in place. And then before you do anything else, it's very important that you leave it to dry, because the next part is going to be a bit trickier than this. Okay, so that's made up the first two sets of guns, which are going to fit into these. The third one uses a slightly different set of parts, so we have to modify it less than the others. Okay, so we're really lucky with this kit, because when your magnet's dried, what you can do is the easiest way to get the poles right is we just take our other magnet and just drop it on top, And we are very lucky with this kit in that the hole that's left behind, now these are 2mm magnets, the hole that's left behind leaves a gap that's enough to just wedge your part in there. So what you can do is when your magnet's sat on there, you just get your other part and push it on top, and that's going to wedge that magnet inside with enough grip so as when you take it away it stays inside. All you need to do then is there's enough wedge in there so the metal from your clippers isn't going to attract the magnet enough to cause it to pop out or anything. So you push it inside, drop a touch of super glue on top and leave it to dry. Actually used way too much super glue there, so let's wipe some off. Then leave it to dry and that will stay in there. That way, when you want to swap out your weapons later on, all you do, drop them on. So there is another weapon that goes on there. This uses a different housing to fit into than from this one. But what we're going to do is we're going to stick with this one. And if we get a magnet dead center in the back of these, we're going to be able to just use that one housing for everything. Now we need to do something slightly different in this case. So we need to get a drill. We need to recess a hole in here that we can put our magnet into. You just get one of these little hand drills. They're about a £5 off of Amazon. I'm going to go as close to the centre as we possibly can. Recess a couple of mil. If you can't get it big enough with your drill bit, get the end of your clipper and whack that in there. Just use it to make that hole big enough for you to get your magnet in. So you do that on all 4 pieces. Now 2 of your pieces have already got some sort of pre-made holes that make it possible to see right through. That shouldn't make too much difference. There's a small gap in the middle that we can use to put our little pilot hole in, and then we can go back and widen it afterwards. Just go slow with this one because it's quite difficult. If you can't actually get a drill hole in there, just clip a little tiny section out with your clippers. And that'll be enough to recess that magnet in there. There we go. Right, so I've completed the magnetizing. I'm going to carry on and finish the build before I go back and show you how it all works. I'm not particularly happy with how it's turned out really. It allows me to do what the plan was, which is to switch out the weapon loadouts, but you might get better results than I did in terms of the actual look of the finished article. So let's carry on, finish up the build, and then we'll have a look at everything. Now there's 2 options for the actual lid of the tank itself. There's one that's open with a Space Marine sticking his head out, and there's one that's shut. I'm just going to go ahead and stick with the shut version. You could magnetize that, but I think it would take quite a long time to do it properly, and I'm not convinced it would look great either. Right, so let's take a look. So between our 3 different options, we've got the Lancer, Valiant and Reaper. So if we look at the let's have a look at the Valiant first. So that's the main loadout with the twin las cannons. I haven't put the other weapons on here, hang on. So these just go on with the magnets. Might need some posing and that kind of thing, but generally they look pretty good. So that's that. So let's have a look at the Reaper now. So there's that. Very nice. So finally, let's have a look at the Lancer. Now in terms of the weapons on the side, you get two options for the Lancer. Now these ones have gone on, the housing for them is different, so they don't fit quite as well when they are magnetized, but they certainly work okay. Need to redo that one a bit. So yeah, I'm really happy with it, really cool model. There are a lot of bits left on one of the sprues for various options and that kind of thing. There's a couple of, you can see a couple of parts for guns and that kind of thing, but nothing else too major in there in terms of loadout. A lot of kind of cosmetic stuff, I believe. In terms of these Gladiator tanks in general, let's have a look. So movement of 10, weapon skill 6 up, ballistic skill 3 up, strength 7, toughness 8, 12 wounds, a leadership of 8 and a saves on a 3 up. Stats go down when they're reduced to 4 to 6 and 1 to 3 wounds. So those base stats are 7 up. Weapons options, Fragstorm grenade launchers, which actually are on the side here. We get an Icarus rocket pod, which you can choose to put on instead. So that's there, it just goes on here. Now if you go for the Lancer for your main option, you can take all the rest of your parts, install them inside. And there's enough room in there, it's sort of self-contained in this back part here, because it's closed off. And there's enough room there to make it not incredibly difficult to get all of the parts out afterwards. You may have to fish around for a few bits, but broadly it works out pretty well. So there you go. So yeah, so that is a way you can do it, so you can maintain all three options. It would look cosmetically better if you switched out this housing here for the side guns, for the other parts, which is parts 55 and 35, because those house the weapons for the Lancer a bit easier. But what you lose is that those parts are glued into the housing which actually holds this on with the model. So you need to really make a choice which ones you're going to glue on there. They both look pretty much the same, but are slightly different in terms of functionality. But anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was helpful. I am by no means very good at magnetizing and all that kind of stuff. In fact, I'm pretty awful at it. So if I can kind of have mediocre results like that, I'm sure you can do a lot better. But thanks very much for watching guys, much appreciated. If you want me to follow up with a similar video for the Hammerfall bunker, let me know. I haven't looked through it yet to see what different weapon options are and that kind of thing, but if this video proves popular and people ask me for it, I'll certainly do that because I'll be building that in the next week or so. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Catch you later.